supply this gigantic, large growing population without using fruits and vegetable strains and who that aren't resistant to all these bugs and beetles and try, do we have solutions? Because I know that there are a number of solutions that companies have, but I mean
I
that's I
think
think
there's two, I think there's two issues. In fact, there is an imperative just to feed the people on the planet to genetically modified foods. And let's just be honest about it. Say, guys, look at, we've got 7 billion people to feed. We can't do it otherwise. Here's what it is. We're proud of it. We're going to work on ways to make GMOs safer and safer. That would be an honest way for corporate America and global corporations to communicate with people, don't you think?
Yeah, I agree.
And so that's all Prop 37 is saying, is that just disclose it. Just tell us what's in our food so that we can make a decision. If we want to pay more for organic, non-GMO food, then we want to have that right, just like we want to have the right to be able to decide whether we're going to have this baby or not. If you're a woman, you're talking about choice. But I think that a couple things. One is I think people should grow their own food.
Yeah, that would be pretty nice.
I love that. I've seen them. Have you seen like vertical gardens?
Yeah, absolutely.
You can turn skyscrapers into, have vertical gardens. You can do them in the middle of cities. They produce oxygen. They absorb carbon dioxide. I mean, there is a green fantasy reality out there if we could just move beyond, our present way of thinking. Albert Einstein, my ultimate hero,
Yeah.
has this great quote. He was just such an amazing thinker and mystic. And he has a great quote. He said, "You cannot solve the problems of today with the same thinking that created those problems. You have to
Wait,
think
hold on.
outside the
Repeat
box."
that.
Okay. You cannot solve the current problems with the same kind of thinking that created those problems.
I love that.
In other words, you have to think at a different level. We have technology that can yield more crops at a very low cost, and we're really smart. We sent men to the moon a long time ago when we had computers that were nowhere near as sophisticated as my BlackBerry or your iPhone. Let's come up with a solution. Let's turn cities into urban agriculture locations. Let's have people grow things, in ways that we never thought of, but without genetically modifying them. I mean, there's so many crops. For example, one of the most beneficial crops in the whole world is industrial hemp.
Yep.
Do you know that hemp, which grows, you don't need pesticide for industrial hemp. It grows like a weed because, you know why?
No.
It is a weed.
Well, it is, you're right, it is.
Right, it grows like a weed, and it's like, it just grows, right? Hemp is one of the healthiest foods on the planet. I know Jason Mraz knows this a lot. A high level of fiber, and it's no bad fat. It's an incredibly so we could have hemp, industrial hemp growing, and that would meet our protein needs for millions and millions, if not billions, of people. So there are out-of-the-box solutions. But ultimately, coming back to Prop 37, this is a really important conversation. My father said, "Oh no." Here's the bigger point, and this is a kind of sophisticated point, but I think that your fans are ready for it, because they wouldn't be attracted to you if they weren't available to think in this different way. Right. And that is, we have to get to a place where we start to factor in Mike Milken, this famous financial person, billionaire, estimated that a gallon of gasoline, if you factored in the military costs of the wars, the health care costs of the people with cancer from burning, fossil fuels, the climate change costs, the degradation of the environment for all of the oil spills that happen, if factored in the do you know how much we subsidize hamburgers, right?
No.
A kid in the inner city is only eating a hamburger with white bread buns, greasy hamburger, and veg. Okay, we're gonna move out. I can do this. We're on a conference call. We're in this great location. It's Santa Monica. And we're gonna go to another. We got to go to another room. But if you factored in the actual cost of what the damage that creating a quarter pound of beef would be, it would be $30, $40, whatever, because you're cutting down rainforests. You're cutting down rainforests, and not to mention you're adding to childhood obesity and type 2 diabetes and childhood diabetes, and creating all sorts of other health problems that who's paying for them? See, that McDonald's is not paying for them.
Wow.
And ExxonMobil is not paying for the cost of the Iraq War or the cost of climate change. That's one of the reasons climate change is such a big issue. It's like, oh no, we want to continue to make all the profits, and if there's anything happen, so Hurricane Sandy, what was that, $50 billion? If it would have been $10 billion without climate change, because climate change makes storms stronger, who's paying that extra $40 billion? But instead, because of the Republicans, we're subsidizing oil companies and actually giving them money rather than asking them to pay for some of the negative externalities, the other consequences of their product.
But also, I agree with you, but I'm going to raise one point, and I find myself even doing it. We have developed such a need for energy in our lives. Listen, this year I will take 80 flights this year. Think about this for a second. 80. Wow. Typically I take about 60 flights on average. That's a lot of flying.
Wow. That
is a copious quantity of fossil fuel. I have to drive to and from work every day, the Vampire Diaries set. Now we're coming out. We have hybrid and electric cars. Unfortunately, we have to blow the tops of mountains off for these batteries that we need. But we've developed a lifestyles, which people don't want to do. I find it's actually quite fun to start figuring out how to adjust your lifestyle. The executive director of the Somerhalder Foundation. I got this really cool in foreign lands in order to extract 200 million year old sunlight. We frack our own backyards and we pollute our rivers, or we blow up our mountaintops for an hour of electricity when we could just take what's falling from the sky. How interesting is that? We think we're literally drilling into the ground to extract what sunlight created 200 plus million years ago. We're hydraulic fracturing in our backyards, just killing our water supplies, killing wildlife like crazy. And we're blowing off the tops of mountains to produce all of these metals for our batteries. Yet we could literally pull this stuff from the sky. It's the same thought as who was the president that put the solar panels on the White House? Jimmy Carter.
Well, it was Jimmy Carter, and then they were taken off.
Who was the president that took them off immediately once he got into office?
Ronald Reagan, Republican.
Why would you ever do that? Why would you ever take solar cells off of the White House that were producing free energy, take them off, and make what statement? That's my question. That's what
love that. And that whole idea of like dominating the earth, right? Drilling in, sucking things out of it, right? As opposed to working in harmony with nature, because nature is saying, here's this infinite amount of energy in the form of sun and wind, and also tidal energy. I love tidal energy. I mean, you just put up generators into the oceans, and oceans, moving back and forth, and it just spins those turbines. And same thing with micro hydro, where you put them in rivers. There's a great writer named Rianne Eisler. She wrote a book called The Chalice and the Blade, and then she wrote another book called The Power of Partnership. And she said there's basically two different philosophies about how you interact with the rest of the world, how you interact between men and women, how you interact between man and the rest of civilization, the rest of creation. And one is a domination mentality, and that would be, the epitome of that would be drilling and dominating the earth, right? Let's blow off the mountaintops, let's suck out the minerals, let's drill as far as we can into the earth. I mean, it's a very sexual thing. We are dominating the earth to get our energy. Just like some men in certain cultures and certainly years ago had this idea that men dominated women. Shut up, woman. I am the dominant party here. You do what I say, right?
Right.
And then that's limited in terms of how far it can take civilization. The next step is a partnership model. So it's like, okay, Earth, you have these needs and you have these resources. How do I work with the resources in a way that is consistent with your needs, right? Right. Climate change is an example of the Earth kind of having a fever, and in essence, like when we have a fever, throwing off the germs, the bacteria that's causing the problem, the viruses. And so a partnership model of creating energy is to say, okay, it's like Tai Chi, it's like martial arts. Here's this incredible energy that you're giving me from the sun, from the wind, and we're just going to work with you. We're going to work with the ocean. We're going to work with the rivers and the streams to create energy, right? And just like in a healthy relationship, a man is not going to dominate a woman in the 21st century, I think. You want to work in partnership, where each gives of their assets and we compensate for their liabilities. So the Republicans, one of the ways to understand them is that because of religious ideas that man has, literally, it's stated in the Bible, has dominion over the earth and all of the creatures thereon. There is this idea that Republicans tend to have, which is we are the dominant species, we're the dominant culture, in America, all of that. And Democrats have a very different philosophy, saying, you know what, we may be dominant in some ways, but I really care about the people in Rwanda. I really care about the polar bears up in the Arctic. I really care about, the ecology of the earth, and I want to work in partnership with that. And it's a very different mindset. And again, I'm coming back, the whole Choose Your America thing, there is a very, very big difference that we get to make tomorrow. Right. And we're trying to highlight the differences in philosophy and values and policies between Barack Obama and the Democrats and Mitt Romney and the Republicans. And I am not upset with people. Oh my God, I found the secret code. There are these different core values and everything about one party as opposed to another, and it's more diverse now than ever before. It's not like there's not one Republican who believes as I do, and there are very few Democrats who believe any differently than I do. Right. And I would say the same thing is probably true for you as well. So anyway, yes on Proposition 37, because we want to make sure that corporations are just honest and that they tell the truth. And if we need to include GMOs to feed the world, then let's at least do that consciously and volitionally.
And honestly, yeah.
Honestly.
There are people listening with us, man, because this is what we need to know. This is what we need to know. I'm literally going to take a quick bathroom break because we're human beings, and like a conversation. Say we're having dinner. You know, I have my pecans and I have my tea, and where are you right now, by the way, Richard?
I am in a place called Cross Campus. It's a incubation facility in Santa Monica on like between 8th and 9th on Broadway. Very close to one of my favorite restaurants, Raw, Giuliano's Raw. And so you go take your bio break. Let's talk about the rest of the evening.
Yeah, well, let's talk about it.
This is so important. And to places like Ohio and Nevada and whatever, as reach 200 people. And what's so beautiful about you and your network, Ian, and Jason and his network, is that we have thousands of people on the line right now having this conversation. I want to hear more from them, and I don't.
Yeah, no,
I'm not
I
on
agree.
So, what's the best way for us to get some? Do you want to read some of their questions? And I'll answer them. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Read some of the questions. Answer them while you go take a pee or whatever you're going to do.
A bio break. I like that. So here, listen. I'm going to give you a great. I'm going to give you a great question. There's so many amazing questions coming. They do, and it's really cool that they're on with us. And thank you for taking all this time. So, let's see. Let's see here. Haha, we're getting some great. What do you call the little emoticons? I'm looking. So here's one. Rob Carmichael says, "Can't wait to see the look on Ian's face. Hashtag Choose Your America. If hashtag Obama gets reelected and he has to pay 75% in taxes." We're not. Question, Rob Carmichael. I am in no way attacking you at all. Just offering up. I'm not a politician. I'm not an economist. But I'm going to literally leave for 90 seconds. If you can elaborate on that, fill me in when I come back, I would love that, because I'm looking at. Believe it or not.
You want to read another? You want to read another tax question?
No, I'm saying that most of the tax questions coming in saying, "Hey, you left winger," which it's not about that. I mean, I think we're all pretty fiscally conservative people. And that you can't even play ball in the field. So the idea is that most of the tax questions saying, "Ian, guess what? If Obama gets reelected, we're all going to, especially you're going to be paying, literally, I see this 75% taxes," and I just can't. That's never going to happen.
It's not even close. I mean, what I talked to you before was raising the top rate from 35% to 39%. That's an awful long way away from 75.
Yeah.
And tell your fan, I would have a problem with a 75% top tax rate. Although it wasn't that long ago in the United States that the top tax rate was 90%.
Right. But I mean, I think we can all agree on, well, I would have a massive problem paying 75% in taxes because I think that is a misuse of all of our money and it doesn't incent any of us to work harder. Um,
But hold on, let me ask you. Like in Denmark and some of the Scandinavian countries, right? If you were paying, and Jason Mraz was talking about this, if you paid 75%, but like everything was taken care of, you know, complete health care and Social Security instead of being a few $100s was enough for old people to live on, and you know, in other words, you kind of get what you pay for, and maybe in certain ways, if it's done in the right way, which it often isn't, and I'll agree with your caller, with your fan, you know, the government, there are efficiencies that can be done. For example, what kind of infrastructure could we have if we paid a lot more in taxes? Could we have a new green, clean infrastructure that would save the United States the $400 billion a year? That's $400 billion a year that we send to Saudi Arabia and to Canada and out of the
Absolutely.
United States to buy oil. So if we
Right.
increased taxes for a while, we created a new infrastructure. Let me tell one story on this to your friend. One of the great Republicans in history was Dwight D. Eisenhower, a former general. He was in charge of winning the war, World War II, for the United States and the Allies. In 1956, he had this idea that it'd be really cool for the United States to be connected by interstate highways. Up until that point, there were only state highways. And there were Republicans at the time saying, President Eisenhower, General Eisenhower, you're crazy, you're a communist, you're this. You know, government can't do that. That's
But
not
wasn't
the
that
role of the
specifically for military strategic? Wasn't that also too to be able to mobilize military throughout the country?
Well, it was for two reasons. It was for national security, and
Right.
Dwight Eisenhower, a five-star general, understood that, but also enormous efficiencies for business.
Right.
Imagine how long it would take to get products from California to New York if you're taking just little state roads. You have to
Keep
go.
talking. Yep, keep talking. I'll be right back.
It's okay. Here's the thing. He's not an alien. He's not a true vampire. Ian Somerhalder actually has to go to the bathroom every once in a while. Anyway, so Dwight Eisenhower resisted the complaints of the Republicans in Congress at the time and said, you know what? And it was like $1 trillion worth of present-day expense. He said, it's not spending on things, it's investing in America. And if, in fact, we had to increase taxes to make investments, just like a corporation has to kind of tighten its belt and use some of its liquidity in order to buy another company or make an investment, upgrade their infrastructure, upgrade their computer systems, whatever, those things oftentimes pay off. So 75% sounds like a lot, but there are even circumstances where I think Ian would agree that for a short term maybe you want to do. The question ultimately is, are we in this together, or are we a bunch of individuals? And I think that most Democrats have a hybrid philosophy, and that is that there are certain things where private enterprise is fantastic and needs to be involved, and certain things where the government is better suited. For example, Hurricane and Superstorm Sandy. I think you would agree that if New Jersey had to handle it on its own, or individuals in the certain towns that were hardest hit in New Jersey or New York had to handle it on their own, that would be a problem. That there are economies of scale where only a collection of all of the individuals and their resources, which we call the government, can actually handle things. Fighting a war, like New Jersey fighting a separate war in Iraq or Afghanistan, or do you want all of us to pool our resources, come up with a common desire, intelligently and strategically and efficiently determine that or not? So one of the big issues on that is PBS. PBS, right? So Mitt Romney made a famous thing. He said he likes Big Bird, he likes Jim Lehrer, but he's going to defund PBS, and which would basically put an end to it. It's just a question. Is it efficient? Because what PBS provides is something very different than what NBC, ABC, CBS, and Fox and other for-profit television networks provide. Because these for-profit television networks are driven by one thing, and what is that? Bottom line. All corporations are required legally to maximize the earnings of their shareholders. That's their job. And so if that means that you don't put on Big Bird and you don't do the Muppets and you don't do Sesame Street because it's not economic, it's too expensive to produce, or you can't get enough advertising or whatever, that you throw it away and you put on things that are more like Housewives of whatever that may not be as good for kids to watch, but it'll make more
Housewives of Sesame Street.
You know what, Ian? I think you're onto something, dude.
No, so wait, keep going. So you're right. That's exactly it. It's not. I grew up with Sesame Street, and there was some interesting.
And look how that turned out. You see, it was a worthwhile investment.
Look how terrible I turned out. And there's something to be said for understanding some really cool values when you're young. And it shapes our really young, really absorbent minds. Mm-hmm. Keep going, because I wanted to ask you.
Anyway, just the point was, and your fans' question, and I hear it all the time. Are we frozen?
Nope.
Okay, we're frozen for a second. And I hear it all the time, and this is the thing that seems to drive people towards Mitt Romney, and and against Barack Obama. It's my opinion that Barack Obama is a capitalist. He is a free enterprise guy. He believes in private enterprise. He does believe that if you build it, it is in large part because you built it, not that the government or society built it. But it's a hybrid. Literally, I mean, if you went to a public school, your community helped educate you, as opposed to if you went to a private school. And if you use the fire department, if you use the police department, if you use the roads, those were all provided for by a collective. You can call it local government, state government, federal government. I don't like the word government. I like the word that we come together, we aggregate our resources in a collective fashion and make collective decisions. And that's what government is best at, because you can't do it. I was saying as you went out, what if in handling Hurricane and Superstorm Sandy, New Jersey was on its own, or the individuals in New Jersey were on their own?
They wouldn't have the resources to fix those.
They can't. And that was the thinking behind Obamacare, that, hey, if we aggregated 300 million plus people and our resources, we could be more efficient in providing for the people who really need health care than if we kind of throw them out into the woods by themselves and let them fend for themselves. And I understand that it cuts across whatever it is that people who've read Ayn Rand and The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged, it's all individual, but I think that's only great in certain aspects, and that we do need to come together as a community in others. So anyway, I'm done with that. Are there any more difficult?
Yeah, no, let's look, man. No. I love it. I love it, man.
And you know what, Ian? Let me just say something.
Talk to me.
I've had this fantasy, and I want to just float this live in front of your fans. Not that kind of fantasy. And although I'm sure many people have fantasies about you.
Hello.
Hold on, Donna. Come on. You want to mention? So this is my dear friend for 30 years, my PR person, Donna Schumann.
Hi.
Hi, Donna.
I just want to. I just want to acknowledge you. I think you're one of the most inspiring and innovative, young and articulate, passionate, politically savvy actor I've had the pleasure to. I've been listening to you all day, all afternoon.
Oh,
and I
thank you.
Love to have the opportunity to meet you sometime, and so appreciate you hanging in with us here.
Well, I am appreciative to you for doing this and providing this platform, and obviously helping him and what he does. This is, I think, informative. I mean, here's the cool thing, guys, is that there are most likely anywhere between 12 to 60-year-olds listening to what we're talking about here, and that's the idea. And what's so cool is just the idea of a hangout, having this conversation. I think that, again, Richard's ability to I told him once, I said, you help unconfuse me, because there's so much to know, And this man has this sort of innate ability to unconfuse you and to sort of lay out the information and statistically, not just his opinion, but statistically lay out how things work, what the facts are. And once you allow someone to see the facts, then ultimately you've empowered them, and then they can make their own decision. And what he said earlier, he said, listen, if you believe X, Y, and Z, then by all means I respect that, vote for Mitt Romney. But if you don't, that's not the America I want to live in. If you don't believe in those things, I, for one, I'm not a politician. I never wanted to have, I don't have an agenda. I just want to live in the America that I feel that we should be living in. Some people say, well, that you're contradicting yourself, because ultimately that is an agenda. I think that we all should be able to vote on however we feel. I understand that. And I never wanted to bludgeon people on the head as to who they should vote for. And I never wanted to be that vocal about it. However, I understand now what is at risk. And I cannot be silent. I would be doing myself and this country, and ultimately, not to sound too cerebral or dramatic, the world a great disservice if we didn't fight tooth and nail for what we believe in, and to not have us go back into the Stone Age where women have no rights of what they can do with their body, where the EPA is dismantled. I don't want to live in a country where the EPA is dismantled, where it is a proven fact, said audibly all the time, the EPA, goodbye. You're causing too many problems. Your science isn't warranted, and ultimately it's really not good for our petroleum business. Rather than having, and you could listen to Jack Gerard, who's the CEO and president of the American Petroleum Institute, talk all day about the tens of billions of dollars that they've invested into green energy initiatives, whether it's Shell or Exxon, BP, whatever it is, over the last, say, 5 years. And then you ask them, because I was there sitting on an energy panel that the Washington Post put together a couple years ago, and where I got to speak, and Mary Jordan moderated it. It was the coolest thing ever. But I was listening to this man. I was listening to Jack Gerard give this on this panel, and people were asking him where this money went. And he didn't necessarily stutter, because this man is highly intelligent and very knows how to speak on any given subject. But he couldn't actually place where these tens of billions of dollars they said they've spent went over the last number of years. And what you would think is say there is 50 to 100 years left of petroleum, but it's literally destroying our world. Wouldn't it make sense, a co-venture between big corporations and governmental bodies, to figure out ways to produce more efficiently, but put money into future alternative initiatives? But what happens is, as human beings, we say, no, let's take it as far as it'll go. It's like, let's just take this petroleum thing to literally the last drop, and then we'll figure it out. It's the most bizarre concept, and I don't want to live in that America. And for Mitt Romney, in a debate, sitting there saying, I'm going to bring that pipeline down. That's the first thing I'm going to do. Can you imagine bringing all this Alberta tar sands through the middle of our country? That, if you look at historically what these types of pipelines, how they're built, how they're maintained, and what they actually cause environmentally, and maybe they're saying it's going to produce tens of billions of dollars worth of jobs. No, it might create a few thousand jobs, but if you were to do a cost-benefit analysis of the environmental implications versus the amount of money produced from the actual fuel itself, it's crazy. The amount of fuel that it takes to use, that you have to use in order to produce a gallon of fuel from Alberta tar sand, is staggering. I couldn't tell you, I couldn't quantify it. I don't know how many gallons of fuel it actually takes to produce 1 gallon, but I know that the numbers don't stack up. And so that's why I'm doing this, and that I'm unbelievably fortunate, very grateful that I met Richard. And I think anyone watching this, I honestly think that we should be grateful to Donna and Richard for allowing us to do this and putting all this together, and to Yap and TV and to Google Hangout for making this all possible. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to look at, because there's so many cool, just badass questions coming in, and
While you're doing that, I just want to introduce Ellen Ludwig, who is
Twitter queen.
very involved in what we're doing on Choose Your America.
I have a 20-year-old son, so you're an inspiration too.
Hey, thank you.
Emily, who did all the graphics, is a student. She's a senior at the University of Kansas. So we have a volunteer who's done all the graphics for the campaign.
And did that issues guide that I'd love for people to take a look at.
Oh wow! I would tweet that. That's amazing. Thank you so much for doing this. This is a great honor, and I'm unbelievably grateful. You got a team of ladies back there, buddy. That's
well, and also Laura O'Connor and so many people, because it's just and what I wanted to suggest before, and I've had this fantasy, and that's how we got to Donna, and she was raising her hand. She has a different kind of fantasy view than I do, and that is, there is a really super simple way for people to become far more educated about these incredibly important issues for our future, and that is through documentary films. And so my fantasy for the past several years is to have a Friday night virtual documentary film festival with people like you.
Wow. That would be cool, man. Let's set that up.
And so, well, and let's do it soon. Whether Mitt Romney is the next president or Barack Obama, I still think it's so useful for people to understand these issues. And so, for example, we're talking about fracking. Mark Ruffalo, who is a great environmentalist, right? And Mark is supposed to join us a little bit later as well. Mark Ruffalo.
Okay, good. We have him today. Good, tonight.
He was gonna. I asked him. I said, "Would you host, kind of in a Google Hangout-y way?" And we're going to talk to Yap TV about it. And thanks to Kevin Surace and Sean and Trevor and Jill and all the people at Yap TV. They're putting a lot of resources to make this happen. And it was a little tricky technologically, but I'd love to see, like, every Friday night, let's all get together. Let's get a beer, get a pizza, a joint, whatever it is that you want to do on your Friday night, and let's watch, like, have Mark Ruffalo join us. And he talks about fracking because he's spent years studying it, and we watch Gasland together and another film, and then we pick these films that really educate people in where you have literally millions of dollars of resources going in to tell a story, and we get to sit back and we get to experience that and then talk about it.
Awesome. That sounds like, see, this is what's so cool about this idea that we can do this. This technology is allowing us to do this. I would be totally on board with that, and I think a lot of people would be on board with that. I think that would be a phenomenal way, and we can bring in a lot of cool people to do that.
Well, let's absolutely do that. Now, you had a couple questions you were going to read.
Yeah. Let me find it again. First of all, I do need to say this. I'm going to retweet this really quickly. See if I can get a comment out of that. No, I'm going to retweet it. Retweet, and then I'm going to say, no, you have to go study. I'm looking at or do homework. I'm looking at all of these tweets saying that, and it's really pretty awesome, but they're saying, I have an essay due, or I have a lot of homework, or I have this test or this test, but I'm learning more about politics and this election listening to Richard Green and Ian Somerhalder, and I'm saying I really appreciate that, but I'm sure somewhere someone is recording this and we'll be able to, you know what I mean? You have to go, if you have homework and you have an essay due, I know this is insanely important, but take what you need from this, and then go get that done, and then come back to us, even if you have to lay in bed and hide from your parents. But please don't do something that you're not supposed to do and then blame it on me.
Right. Well, if I can give some homework to everyone else, here's the homework, and that is, so let's say, I don't know how many people we have, let's say we have 5,000 people watching right now. If those 5,000 people literally were moved to do something, and let's say the average person has, 200, 300, 500, 1,000 Facebook fans, or Facebook friends, and people on Twitter, if you tweeted out or you sent Facebooked out just the issues guide alone, or if you want to say, hey, just want to make sure, join here, Ian is on this Google Hangout, and I'm inspired, and I want you to vote for Barack Obama and all the Democrats, or I want you to vote for Mitt Romney and all the Republicans. For you to do that, I mean, let's have this be an incubator. Here we are at this incubation place in Santa Monica for new ideas. Let's have this Google Hangout be an incubator of a lot more communications that go on. So you can go to chooseYourAmerica.org and go where it says Issues Guide and send that out, and with whatever thing that you want to say to make sure that people vote, because I have to tell you, I'm very concerned about tomorrow.
Yeah.
The thing that scared me the most is that there was a poll in Pennsylvania. Laura!
Hey,
Laura.
guys.
Where are you?
I'm in Chicago. Hey, Ian.
Station.
You're in Chicago.
I'm in Chicago, yeah. Wait, you gotta see this.
What are you showing us?
What are you showing us? Oh, yeah, baby.
No.
The Obama thing. I was just telling people. So Laura's been working very closely with the Obama campaign, and we were just talking about how it's going to be incredibly close. And last night I saw the polls that said it's 47-47 tied in Pennsylvania. If President Obama loses Pennsylvania and Florida and perhaps Ohio, it's game over. And we have a completely different Supreme Court for the rest of our generation, and we have a very different America. And according to Bill Nye, we will not be able to solve the climate change challenges. Just a few of those examples. So go to chooseYourAmerica.org, the issues guide, send it out with whatever message that you want. And if you care about this, get people to vote on either side. Laura, go ahead.
So can I just say one thing? I know you got to go back to work, Ian. I was listening as I was powering up. So thank you so much for being here.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for putting all this together. You guys have been so phenomenal, and I'm so grateful. Hey, how's the energy in Chicago right now? Oh, I think we lost her. I think there's so much energy in that room that she went bye-bye. But she's amazing, and she's awesome.
Right, and very, very dedicated. So I want to hear a few more questions.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. Let's do it. I was going to tweet that. Let me see this. So, one of them is, I just had this one.
Here, let me read
That's
something I said. I just can't believe how much I'm learning in just the short amount of time that I've been listening. I am freaking out about this election, and I'm not sure who my parents are voting for, but I'm nervous about that too. I just want this nation to come together as one again. I hate the way our country has turned out these last couple of years. So talk to your parents and go over the issues with them. Here's the big challenge, and I don't blame anyone for this. It's like, if you spend, the average American supposedly spends like 5 minutes a week studying and thinking about, learning about politics and current events, and that's just not enough. And so I think it's vitally important, again, we're coming back to this whole theme, that you, Ian, are helping people get engaged with this, because I think politics and current events, it's the best reality show ever. It's not as good as Vampire Diaries, perhaps, but it's like better than any reality show. You've got sex, you've got intrigue, you've got money, you've got power, you've got all of that.
You got money and power. Hey, Laura, she's back.
Hey, sorry, it's a little noisy. I'm actually in the Chicago train station. But all I was going to say is that we've been encouraged. Saw the USA Today this morning in Ohio. I was in Ohio this morning. It said 48%. But most of the people I talked to in Wisconsin were voting for the president. And one of the things Did you all read Deepak Chopra's letter, thank you letter to the president, which just got posted on Huffington
We have not
Post?
done that
It's
yet.
on intent.com and Huffington Post, and it's a thank you letter to the president, which we will read later in the broadcast. But basically, the gist of it is that there's a lot of horrible things that could be happening much worse than they are. The president has been able to help stop so far, and I think that speaks to what you were saying, Richard, about if we don't have more time to go down the path, so it's going to be rather horrific. So we should just keep, imagining what we want and keep working hard to get it. And there's lots of ways to do that. So.
Well, I'm gonna find this. I'm gonna try and find this Deepak letter that I can't wait to hear. And just if you get a chance later, pop back in and say hi to us and let us know what's going on over there.
Or know that the number to call. By the way, I was only part listening. I just got an email from Graham Nash. Anyone a fan of Crosby, Stills, and Nash?
Hello, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want Graham to join us?
That would be awesome. That would be so cool.
Ian?
Yeah, can you hear me? Did I lose you?
Lose you?
Nope, there we are.
Ian, go ahead. Ian?
Yep, I'm here. There you go. So yeah, I think that would be awesome for him to join. I think that would be so cool. I think, a lot of the younger generation listening to this won't know, but I would definitely say just Google Mr. Graham Nash, and you will very quickly understand what a legend this guy is, and I'm imagining a pretty cool dude. I've listened to his music forever since I could walk, so he's a huge, not only a rock legend, but he's amazing.
Okay, good. So we're going to see if we can get Graham to come in, and we've got Sharon Lawrence, who's going to be calling in. Sharon is an actress, environmentalist, and what is it?
7 o'clock.
She's coming in at 7 o'clock, which is in about a half an hour.
And
Mark Ruffalo. Let's get Mark Ruffalo in. Do we know how to do that?
I just want to make an announcement that Sharon's going to be viewing. They did an amazing video. It's called the LOVE Love Voting video that Laura knows all about, produced by Julie Bregman. And it features Sheila E., Amy Brennerman, Saida Garrett, Fergie, Sophia Bush, Brenda Russell, and many, many more. And so I'm going to show that at 7 o'clock, and Sharon's going to be coming in as well. So stay tuned.
That's awesome.
So and go ahead, we're going to try to get Graham in here and some other people, and just this Google Hangout on election. And Ian, let's read a few more questions if you have any.
Yeah, let's do it. Oh, this is interesting. This is actually interesting. She said, I'm not against Romney or Obama. I extract what they say and wish they could be combined. Oh, that would be a hail. That's what you refer to as a Hail Mary pass. But this one right here, do you think that this is actually an interesting, and the reality of this is no, because we've become so different and polarized. From Nina Chiquita, nice. Do you think that if Obama gets reelected, the Republican Party might be split and reform itself? And unfortunately, I can't imagine that happening. But I think that Mitt Romney actually made a good point, which there are very few that he makes. But one was the success of Massachusetts and the understanding of that he had a completely Democratic Senate, and that he worked with them. And I remember sitting that Thursday when they were meeting the debt ceiling crisis, as we can call it, I had been testifying in Congress on a multinational species conservation funds reauthorization act, which was HR 50, and two other bills. I don't remember which ones, but it was about international conservation of species, because it's how you quantify it and turn it into national security issues like Somalia. You know, no one went to Somalia and said, listen, if you overfish your waters, you're going to have no economy. And now, how does that translate to us? Well, we're spending, don't quote me on it, $10 million a week or something, using our naval boats to patrol the waters off of the, the coast of Somalia to keep Americans and to keep commercial ships safe. Well, that you have to be able to go across the aisle. And I was having a lunch, and I was with Senator Udall, a Republican senator, and I said, sir, I said, I don't understand why I'm here. And it was all members of Republicans, members of Congress, members of Senate. And he said, you know why you're here? He said, because we can't talk to each other anymore. And he said, you can. You can reach across the aisle. You can talk to both Democrats and Republicans alike. Will talk to you as an equal, because everyone has something to gain. And I thought it was such a surreal moment, having a luncheon in the Capitol while this whole debt ceiling thing is going on. And I realized that it is that. It is that. And I think that if filibusters suck, and that if you have a Congress or a Senate that is going to gridlock and lock up every vote or every bill that the president wants to pass, then we'll have another 4 years of stalemates. And that in and of itself is extremely dangerous. So to this person, Richard, I think that we would say, what would we say to that? I mean, it's highly unlikely, but maybe what do you think is a result of what would happen? Do you see any kind of positive notions in the future when the president gets reelected?
Well, let me address that. You've raised some really important things, which are part of these 10 reasons as well.